Today, we're taking you inside the Smithsonian National Museum of African American History and Culture in Washington, D.C. Get ready to explore the powerful stories and vibrant culture within this incredible African American history museum, from its iconic architecture to its profound exhibits. Let's begin. We start our tour, walking towards the impressive building in Washington, D.C., that houses the Smithsonian National Museum of African American History and Culture. The museum opened in 2016, with an iconic design, created by an architectural team led by David Ajayi. Its iconic tiered bronze-colored corona was inspired by the Yoruba-inspired, a traditional West African column with a crown shape. The building is LEED Gold certified, utilizing features like natural lighting, solar panels on the roof, and rainwater harvesting. An already impressive structure, inside is even more extraordinary as there are 3 levels of the museum underground. It took us 2 separate days to get through the entire museum. Up close, you can admire the bronze-colored lattice that pays homage to the historic ironwork crafted by African Americans in the South. Upon entering the museum, you will find yourself on Level 1, Heritage Hall, a soaring, open space, where you will find the welcome desk, the museum store, lockers, and a pavilion theater. Hanging on the ceiling is an impressive sculpture called Swing Low. It was created by Chicago sculptor Richard Hunt, and the arc segments reference the swinging motion of the Band of Angels, made famous in the beloved Negro spiritual, Swing Low, Sweet Chariot. As mentioned, the museum has levels below ground in addition to the above-ground levels. The lower levels are the history galleries and focus on the historical journey of African Americans, emphasizing the struggles, resilience, and triumphs across centuries. The upper levels celebrate art, culture, community, and achievement, highlighting African American contributions across various sectors. We decided to start our journey with the history galleries, beginning with the lowest level, moving up through history to the top of the museum. As such, we took the escalator down to the Concourse level, and then walked to the elevator that would take us to the lowest level, Concourse 3. Each of the 3 levels of the history galleries are devoted to a major era in African American history. They are arranged chronologically, and are meant to be experienced from the bottom up, thus our decision to start on C3. This journey through history, called the Journey Towards Freedom, spans from the 15th century slave trade, to President Barack Obama's presidency, and the Black Lives Matter movement of the 21st century. Notably, as one moves upward through the galleries, both the subject matter and the physical spaces transition from dark, confined environments to brighter, more open galleries, a design that symbolically mirrors the progression from the darkest chapters of history toward moments of triumph and hope. Concourse 3 houses the Slavery and Freedom exhibition, marking the period from 1400 to 1877. It starts in 15th century Africa, when the transatlantic slave trade emerged, to serve the growing demand to cultivate sugar. Prior to that time, there were not really national boundaries, and African and European peoples had traded for centuries across the Mediterranean. For example, Atlantic Creoles were multilingual individuals of African descent, who adeptly navigated diverse cultures and roles across the Atlantic world, serving as intermediaries in trade, diplomacy, and religion. This fluidity demonstrates that status was not yet firmly tied to ideas of race during this early period. Like Africa, Western Europe was home to diverse people who lived in territories, as small as a city-state and as large as a kingdom. As Europeans began to form nation-states, they sought to increase their influence around the world through trade, exploration, and colonization. These new nation-states forged national identities, in part through religion and casting out people who did not belong, such as non-Christians. New national identities also made it easier to justify enslaving people from Africa and the Americas. The demand for profit and power came with a human cost, and by the 1600s an unanticipated shift took place. The primary commodity became enslaved African people. Cowries, manillas, beads, and guns changed hands in exchange for African men, women, and children. European slave ships, flying the flags of their nations and merchant companies, amassed at trading posts like Cape Coast Castle, awaiting human cargo. And the transatlantic slave trade resulted in the largest forced migration of people in world history. Profits from the sale of enslaved humans and their labor laid the economic foundation for Western Europe, the Caribbean, and the Americas. The human cost was the immense physical and psychological toll on the enslaved. Their lives were embedded in every coin that changed hands, each spoonful of sugar stirred into a cup of tea, each puff of a pipe, and every bite of rice. For over 4 centuries, millions of Africans were forcibly taken from their homeland, packed into ships, and transported on a journey from Western Africa to the Caribbean and the Americas, known as the Middle Passage. From 1565 to 1776, colonial North America was built on merchant, financial, and agricultural ventures, all tied to slavery. African experiences varied widely by region, from the Chesapeake to the Carolinas, Louisiana, and the North. Despite their crucial role in shaping the foundation of the colonies, by the end of the period, race-based slavery was the law of the land, and Africans were enslaved for life. Spread across multiple regions, Africans asserted new identities, created their own cultures, and resisted enslavement. The demand for slaves in North America created a massive economy, and the transatlantic slave trade had global reach. It involved ports throughout the Atlantic world, including Denmark, Portugal, Great Britain, France, and the Netherlands. Governments, businesses, and entrepreneurs built and retrofitted ships to meet the high demand for enslaved Africans. 27,000 Africans were forcibly brought to the northern colonies, from regions like Senegambia, the Gold Coast, Congo, and Madagascar. Their labor built cities, ports, and farms, fueling a thriving slave-based economy. And a cruel irony existed in the fact that their forced labor contributed to the expansion of the enterprise of slavery. From 1775 to 1783, the Revolutionary War was fought for colonial independence, but it exposed a deep contradiction. While demanding freedom from Britain, many colonists held slaves. Enslaved Africans saw the war as a chance to fight for their own freedom, aligning with whichever side, British or colonial, offered the best hope for emancipation. And with that, we emerge from the American Revolution into the paradox of liberty. The American Revolution fought for liberty while upholding slavery, creating a deep paradox at the nation's core. This tension, between freedom and exclusion, continues to shape U.S. institutions even today, and challenges Americans to pursue a more inclusive and just union. After the Revolution, the free black population grew exponentially. Whether by manumission, escape, military service, or birth, black people found paths to freedom. However, black freedom was limited and regulated. Despite facing racism, inequality, and restrictive laws, communities of free black people worked collectively to build institutions, churches, and stood in solidarity with enslaved people. The definition of their freedom was limited, with restrictive codes and constant threats to their status. Undeterred by these challenges, many still succeeded and fought for equal rights and freedom. Notably, you will find a statue of Elizabeth Freeman, one of the first enslaved African Americans to file and win a freedom suit in Massachusetts. The ruling was considered to have implicitly ended slavery in the state. However, this was not the norm. In the early 1800s, the cotton gin, westward expansion, and the end of the transatlantic slave trade led to a rise in domestic trading of slaves. About 1 million enslaved people were forced from their homes to the Deep South to fuel cotton production. While this transformed the new nation into an economic world leader, it simultaneously caused immense suffering to African Americans, their families, and their communities. They were forced by the whip to work faster, better, and harder, often while malnourished and sleep-deprived. Along one wall, we see the expansion of slavery across the nation, along with the fight for freedom. The expansion of the Cotton Empire cemented slavery into American society and the economy. Each new territory raised the stakes. Would it be slave or free? African Americans responded by enacting new visions of American freedom. Year by year, state by state, territory by territory, African Americans used the press, public protest, and freedom of movement to insist that slavery come to an end. Together, this combination of words and actions left their mark on the Constitution, and on our practice of political participation, deepening and enriching liberty for all. On the other side of the gallery, we are horrified with the depictions of the slave auction block. The auction block was a site of fear, humiliation, and uncertainty, where loved ones were separated for life. Auction blocks could be found from colonial times well into the antebellum period. They were often seen in the public square, slave trading offices, hotels, at the docks, in jail yards, and at courthouses. African Americans endured being sold on the block, and being devalued to mere laboring hands, feet, backs, and wombs. The end of the hallway hosts the Point of Pines plantation slave cabin. The slave cabin was built in the 1850s, and was occupied by black families until the 1980s. The history of the cabin illuminates the story of slavery and freedom, land ownership, black culture, kinship, and more. We next walk through exhibits on life and work, and the Civil War. We'll let you listen to some of the narrations as we pass through.
I missed so many children, it done went and stunted my growth, and that's why I ain't nothing but bone to this day. When the colored woman has to cut cane all day till midnight, come in after, I has to miss the babies for them and tend to the white church. Something like so fat and big, I had to choke the feet while
The South fought to expand slavery without government interference. The North fought to preserve the Union, leaving slavery and its profits intact. Abraham Lincoln, at his first inaugural address, emphasized, "I have no purpose, directly or indirectly, to interfere with the institution of slavery in the states where..."
The floor ends discussing emancipation. The Emancipation Proclamation went into effect immediately, freeing enslaved black people in the rebelling states, but it took the Civil War to enforce the order. Yet, then, as in today, the meaning of freedom continues to evolve. Ending that era, we continue up some long ramps to the next level. As we head up to the next level, we pass by an exhibit that talks about Reconstruction. Post-Civil War marked a period where African Americans fought hard to reconstruct America, pushing the nation to live up to its founding promise of human equality. The government moved hesitantly at first, uncertain at granting politician rights to African Americans. Yet, when some white Southerners elected former Confederates, passed laws resembling slavery, and terrorized black communities with murder and looting, Congress reconsidered. The U.S. Army and the Freedmen's Bureau was sent south to protect black rights. Walking up the next ramp, we head to Concourse 2, which is named, Defending Freedom, Defining Freedom, the Era of Segregation, 1876 to 1968. The years after the Civil War were both hopeful and disheartening for African Americans. With the end of slavery, they had hoped to retain full citizenship. Instead, they found themselves resisting efforts to put in place a new form of oppression, segregation. While federal troops were stationed throughout the South, African Americans made economic progress and elected representatives to local, state, and national government. But in 1877, when the troops withdrew, white Southerners began to undermine African Americans' new rights and freedoms. Violence and intimidation were used to discourage African Americans from voting, owning land, or exercising their independence. Regaining control of governments, white Southerners passed new laws to keep blacks and whites segregated. In this gallery, you find the Jones Hall Sims House. As the first house, built in what became the free African American community of Jonesville, Maryland, it stood apart from a typical slave cabin. It was a tangible symbol of Reconstruction, evoking the aspirations, as well as the limitations of that period. Next to the house, you find an exhibit on all-black towns. Across the country, African Americans created towns and neighborhoods, in which they were the majority. On the other side of the hall, we enter a gallery that moves us through the Jim Crow era, through the Great Migration, and into the modern civil rights movement. Jim Crow laws, rooted in 19th-century black codes, enforced racial segregation and discrimination against African Americans through legal, social, and violent means, until they were abolished by the 1964 Civil Rights Act. The gallery also juxtaposed black empowerment against this racism, highlighting African American community building, creating of a culture, the development of historically black colleges and universities, and the formation of women's groups. Faced with the challenges of segregation, African Americans created these institutions and organizations to serve their needs. They had families to care for, and children to educate. They needed places to worship, and places to relax. Establishing businesses, banks, churches, schools, and social organizations guaranteed that segregation would not be a paralyzing force in African American communities. Noteworthy African American writers and composers also emerged. Their books, poems, plays, and music, including ragtime, vaudeville, and the blues, attained wide popularity. Although slavery had ended with the Civil War, many African Americans became sharecroppers. This system required them to rent land from white landowners and pay a portion of their crops as rent. Additionally, they often had to borrow money for seeds, tools, and other necessities, leading to a cycle of debt and economic dependency that closely resembled the conditions of slavery. To maintain this system, white landowners and communities used violence, with lynching becoming a brutal tool of control. To escape these conditions, African Americans left the South to take advantage of northern job openings. This resulted in the largest and fastest mass migrations in the nation's history, known as the Great Migration. During the First and Second World Wars, many African Americans developed a new cultural consciousness. After having defended democracy abroad, many returned seeking to defend their rights as American citizens, and were committed to change. This new spirit was sometimes referred to as the New Negro, evolving from a magazine published by Hubert Henry Harrison, and a manifesto created by Alan Locke, both promoting racial pride. Many white Americans resented this change and fought to maintain the racial and social status quo. Mob violence and race massacres against black communities swept the nation. By the mid-1940s, many African Americans became increasingly vocal to protect and claim their civil rights, beginning the modern civil rights movement. New economic and educational opportunities, including the GI Bill, decreased dependence on farming and sharecropping, and thousands of African Americans relocated to cities, where they enjoyed new freedoms. Many were willing to fight for these new freedoms and demanded equality. It is inspiring to hear the speeches from this moment in time.
Same things that white citizens possess: complete equality, social, economic, and political. No force under the sun.
Emerging back into the main hallway, we find the Angola Guard Tower. Once a plantation, post-slavery, Angola became a prison, where black people were jailed on false charges and forced into labor, effectively slavery by another name. The floor also has a segregated railcar, which reveals the racial inequalities in travel at the time, and an interactive lunch counter, which allows you to explore the courage and strategy of the civil rights movement with digital storytelling. You can walk through the railcar to get a glimpse of what segregated travel looked like. For most of the 20th century, long-distance travel meant taking a train. For African Americans, such travel often meant hours or days of segregated accommodations throughout the South and much of the Midwest. This railroad coach was a first-class railcar, with separate sections for whites and blacks. This first section is for whites only. In the front of the section, there is a whites-only women's restroom and lounge. Although the seats in both sections are similar, the whites-only section also has a whites-only water cooler and oversized luggage bins. Before moving to the colored-only section, you will also find the white men's bathroom. Now, in the colored-only section, you will notice that although the seats in both sections are comparable, in the colored-only section, there is no water cooler or oversized luggage area. In addition, there is only a single bathroom, which is noticeably smaller. This is despite both blacks and whites paying the same price for tickets. This era of segregation reminds us of the harrowing post-Civil War truth: freedom, though legally granted, remained elusive. Amid oppression, African Americans resisted through community, faith, music, and education, driving the spirit of liberation and the civil rights movement. This leads us to the ramp to Concourse 1, transitioning us to the historical narrative from the late 1960s up to the present day. Concourse 1, called A Changing America, takes us from the death of Martin Luther King Jr. to the second election of Barack Obama. Along the way, we pause to watch clips showing the critical role women played in the civil rights movement. Reaching the last floor of the history galleries, A Changing America explores the progress and ongoing challenges faced by African Americans over the past 50 years. We start in a gallery depicting the events of '68, which include the Black Power movement. Inspired by Malcolm X, Black Power emphasized that African Americans should have power over their own schools, businesses, community services, and local government. Similarly, the phrase "Black is beautiful" emerged, embracing Black culture and identity. It called for an appreciation of the Black past as a worthy legacy, and it inspired cultural pride in contemporary Black achievements. The area also examines the national trauma following Dr. King's assassination, the Poor People's Campaign and Resurrection City, and Black liberation and the Vietnam War. We transition from the events of '68, with the fight for racial justice continuing. The movement marches on, highlights community activism, cultural pride, and modern movements like Black Lives Matter, proving the struggle for equality is far from over. The next section depicts the changing landscape of cities and suburbs in relation to African Americans, starting in the 1970s. After decades of migrating from the South to escape racism and find industrial jobs, they were confined to segregated, neglected urban neighborhoods. Faced with police brutality and political exclusion, many left, some moving to suburbs, others returning south, where cities like Atlanta and Houston rose as thriving Black cultural centers, or Black meccas. We continue through the decades. The 1970s marked a decade of political firsts and cultural rebirth, as Black leadership grew and a rising Black middle class emerged. Hip-hop grew in the 1980s, promoting social commentary, party anthems, and pro-Black messages. And in the 1990s, Black America became more culturally diverse with immigration, entertainers and activists reignited civil rights movements, and mass protests highlighted police brutality. The exhibit culminates in a historic milestone, the election of Barack Obama as the 44th President of the United States, marking the first time an African American held the nation's highest office. This ends the history galleries, highlighting the rise of African Americans across all professions, continuing the quest for equality in areas like housing, education, and criminal justice. It addresses pivotal recent events and movements, linking past to present, providing context as we walk up the final ramps to return to the concourse, before heading to the above-ground levels of the museum. The concourse is a great place to take a break, before continuing to the upper levels. There is a cafe here, the Sweet Home Cafe, which showcases the rich culture and history of the African American people, with traditional, authentic offerings, as well as present-day food traditions. There is also a theater, and the Contemplative Court, a beautiful and relaxing place to take a break. As you can see, the main concourse level is open and bright, with high ceilings and windows, letting sunlight in. It is a welcome reprieve, after emerging from the depths and weightiness of the history galleries. We took this opportunity to visit the Contemplative Court. It is one of the museum's most profound and meditative spaces. It was designed to offer a place for reflection, after the emotionally powerful exhibits of the history galleries. After walking up a few ramps, you reach the captivating space. As you can see, the Contemplative Court is a serene, yet impressive space, surrounded by soft lighting and the soothing sound of flowing water. At its center, a bronze cylinder gently releases water into a black granite pool, symbolizing cleansing and renewal. Inspirational quotes from African American leaders like Martin Luther King Jr. line the walls, offering words of hope and resilience. It's a secular sacred space, quiet, introspective, and a perfect pause in the museum's journey. Before heading up to Heritage Hall, to continue our tour in the upper levels, we paused to check out A Century in the Making, which chronicles the extensive, century-long journey to establish the museum on the National Mall. Back in Heritage Hall, we headed across the floor, passing the welcome and information desk, this time heading to take the escalators up to the upper galleries. The upper galleries celebrate the richness and diversity of contemporary African American life, achievements, and cultural contributions, complementing the lower galleries which focused on history. Since they focus on different aspects of African American life, like culture and community, it was less important which order to visit the floors. As such, we decided to go all the way up to L4 and head down through the levels back to Heritage Hall. Here, above ground, the atmosphere is much brighter, and you get amazing views through the lattice work of the bronze-colored corona. These escalators have actually been strategically placed along the building's outer edges, allowing visitors to observe the corona's detailed patterns up close. Natural light filters through the lattice, casting dynamic shadows, and creating an interplay between light and structure that enhances the contemplative atmosphere of the museum. We continue to ascend from dark to light, each higher floor more open and filled with light. And finally, we reach level 4, the culture galleries. There, we enter a visual art exhibit, titled Reckoning, Protest, Defiance, Resilience. It was conceived and installed during a time of global pandemic and mass outcry against racial injustice. It explores the ways that visual art has provided perspective, commentary, escape, and pathways to protest for African Americans. Reckoning, acknowledging both moral harm and its practical solution, is an important part of the Black freedom struggle. Reckoning debuted during the COVID-19 pandemic. It also debuted during what many have called a pandemic of systemic racism. As the world witnessed the 2020 killings of George Floyd and other African Americans at the hands of police, a sense of historical reckoning emerged. Reckoning explores the ways that painters, sculptors, photographers, and textile artists are continuing the traditions of resilience, creation, and healing. Black artists have also used art to show unity within the Black diaspora. In the 1980s, artists like Howardina Pindell and Aja Cowens were struck by the injustice of South African apartheid and used their art as a form of protest. As you explore, you will find pieces such as the Confrontation series by Merton Simpson, a powerful collection of abstract expressionist paintings that reflect the racial tensions and civil unrest of the 1960s. Paintings from Jacob Lawrence's The Life of Toussaint Louverture, a Haitian revolutionary that was born into slavery, but led an uprising that freed Haiti from European rule. And Lava Thomas's portrait of Uretta Adair, part of her mugshot portraits series, that honors the overlooked women of the Montgomery bus boycott, by transforming their arrest mugshots, like Adair's, marked with booking number 7070, into powerful life-size tributes. We also find works celebrating Black life, such as Artie, by Nelson Stevens, that reimagines the traditional Christian altarpiece as a young Black woman. The Sharecropper's masterpiece quilt, which reflects the resilience and creativity of African American women artists. And Miss Brown to You, a vivid oil and acrylic portrait of Suzanne Brown, that centers Black individuals in fine art. Trapped by Alvin Hollingsworth, critiques the practice of redlining, which confined African American communities to under-resourced neighborhoods. Walking, by Charles Alston, emphasizes the collective strength and pivotal role of Black women in the civil rights movement. And Unite, by Barbara Jones Hogu, promotes Black unity and pride. We were mesmerized by Deborah Roberts' 80 Days portrait, that memorializes George Stinney Jr., and the African American flag by David Hammonds. George Stinney Jr., a 14-year-old African-American boy, was wrongfully convicted and executed in 1944. He was the youngest person ever executed in a U.S. prison. The title, 80 Days, references the brief period between his arrest and execution, underscoring the swift injustice he faced. David Hammond's African-American flag reimagines the U.S. flag using the red, black, and green of the Pan-African flag to highlight the dual identity and struggle of being both black and American. It serves as a powerful symbol of black pride, resistance, and reflection on national belonging. Overall, walking through the Reckoning exhibit is a powerful and emotional journey. It reveals how art becomes a mirror, a memory, and a megaphone for justice. We see how protesting social injustice is not just done in the streets, but can also be performed in artist studios. Artists have used their skills to capture feelings of protest for centuries. Similarly, defiance is a part of protest. To protest injustice, people have to defy the status quo. Black artists, and especially black women artists, defy expectations by expressing themselves in ways that others don't expect. Finally, resilience is at the center of successful protest. To be resilient is to survive adversity, overcoming obstacles and continuing forward. Black artists explore themes of resilience by showcasing both strength and vulnerability. Through powerful visuals and stories, Reckoning confronts the pain of systemic racism while celebrating the creativity, strength, and defiant joy that have always fueled the black freedom struggle. Reckoning is a testament to the enduring and continuing role of art in the fight for dignity, equality, and liberation. As we exit this section, we encounter Lola Flash's photographs, St. John the Baptist by Kehinde Wiley, and You're Gonna Give Me the Love I Need by artist Micheline Thomas. These pieces offer powerful commentary not only on race, but also gender, and the enduring pursuit of justice and self-definition. They place historically underrepresented persons as confident, empowered, and central figures in contemporary art. Exiting the exhibit, we find Reclaiming My Time, an exhibition showcasing work by contemporary black interior, graphic, and furniture designers who explore themes of cultural heritage, rest, labor, and leisure. Their work balances luxury, comfort, functionality, and storytelling, embedding new narratives into everyday objects like seating. We then exit the visual art area to walk into the next exhibition, called Cultural Expressions. Cultural Expressions is a circular, experiential, introductory space to African American and African diaspora culture. The first section is called Language, the Power of the Word. It explores the oral traditions and idiomatic expressions of African Americans through individuals including preachers, debaters, politicians, and radio DJs. Continuing around the circle, the next area is called Style, Image and Identity. This section explores the styling impulse of Americans of African descent, from clothing and hairstyling choices to the politics of skin color. It focuses on how identity, politics, and creativity are expressed through clothing, dress, hair, and jewelry. Fashion designers and beauty products are presented, as well as the effects of colorism or skin color discrimination. Items include a teal blue dress and cropped jacket designed by Ann Lowe, one of the first African Americans to become a noted fashion designer in the United States, and a Fat Farm Argyle sweater, representing hip-hop culture's reappropriation of the traditional preppy style. We then pass by movement, social dance and gesture, which examines the spaces where black social dance is performed, and the range of non-verbal communication used by African Americans through gestures, like the high five and fist bump. We explore foodways, culture and cuisine, that depicts the magnitude of the African American hand in the food and foodways of the United States and beyond. Profiles of chefs and restaurant owners accompany explorations of different cuisines, cookware, and tools used in the procurement and service to food. And the final exhibit area in this circle is artistry, craftsmanship and creativity. The focus of this part of the exhibition is the enduring contributions of African American craft. Highlighted are the seminal economic, social, and cultural importance of building crafts. This section illustrates the significance of formal classroom training and apprenticeship, as cultural transmission, learning styles, and the aesthetic traditions of Black community design in American culture. Overall, Cultural Expressions highlights 5 ways through which African American culture is expressed in the United States. The exhibit areas continue inside the circle. It is also surrounded by 360 degrees of overhead video screens, projecting dance, theater, sports, and other performances, creating a dynamic visual experience that complements the physical artifacts below. In its entirety, Cultural Expressions emphasizes that African American culture is an everyday thing, not something to be seen as separate from daily life. Finally, in the center of the exhibit, we find a statue created by Nigerian sculptor Aloe of Eyes, which helped inspire the building's design. In particular, the 3 columns that top this sculpture represent the shape used for the museum's exterior. The next section of Level 4 that we explored was perhaps our favorite, Musical Crossroads. Musical Crossroads tells the story of African American music, from the arrival of the first Africans to the present day. In exploring how the intermingling of musical and cultural traditions, styles, and beliefs brought forth new modes of American musical expression, the exhibition expands the definition of African American music to include African American music makers in all genres and styles. More importantly, in a land where racism and oppression existed as a continuing battle to be fought against and won, it shows how African American music provided a voice for liberty, justice, and social change. In the exhibition, you have the opportunity to appreciate African American music as a vibrant living art form that has been a vehicle of cultural survival and creative expression. Musical Crossroads is the thread that pulls the themes of the museum's various galleries together in a language that is accessible to all. In one corner of the exhibit, you will find the interactive neighborhood record store, designed like an old vinyl record shop, where you can browse covers across a number of different musical genres, including blues, rock, pop, and classical music. In African American neighborhoods, record stores were places where the community, especially youth, could come together to listen to, purchase, and sometimes come face to face with the artists behind their favorite music. In the center, you will find a digital touch table, allowing you to explore and click on any song to play. Through its content, Musical Crossroads is the space where history and culture intermingle, where music serves as the crossroads between the interpretation of musical styles and traditions, and the stories of cultural survivals, individual accomplishments, and social progress. The exhibition's narrative is not organized chronologically, rather through stories of musical genres and contextual themes that are integral subplots in the history of African American music. In this way, the exhibition acknowledges that musical developments of all kinds are constantly evolving simultaneously over space and time. 4 main messages are emphasized throughout the exhibit. First, African American music preserved African cultural traditions, while spurring new innovations. Second, African American music plays a central role in the history of American music. Third, African American musicians are represented in diverse musical forms. And finally, music serves as a universally appealing lens for understanding America's history. Overall, it was a rich area to explore, as well as listen, to the various musical genres created and influenced by African American artists. The final exhibit on the Level 4 Cultural Galleries is Taking the Stage. Taking the Stage provides visitors with the opportunity to reconnect with some of their favorite popular culture memories, as well as to contemplate how the roles Black artists played on the stage and screen reflected changing aspirations, struggles, and realities for Black people in American society. Throughout the exhibition, visitors see how African Americans have acted to shape and transform the ways they are represented on stage by challenging racial discrimination and stereotypes and producing more diverse images of African American identity and experience. Together, these stories suggest how, in taking the stage to express their creative talents, artistic visions, and cultural identities, African Americans have been a force for freedom and social change. The exhibition covers film, television, and theater, presenting 3 main messages as it guides visitors through the African American entertainment experience. First, it demonstrates how African American artists have expanded and enriched the ways that all of these media reflect the diversity of American society through their creative achievements and influence. Second, it showcases the various strategies African American artists developed to overcome the limits that white society placed on their creative freedom, opportunities, and identities. Third, it shows how African American artists use performance as a tool of liberation and transformation. And with that, we complete L4 and continue with our tour on L3, the Community Gallery. This gallery presents a comprehensive exploration of African American history through specialized thematic lenses, focusing on community building, institutional development, and cultural achievements. A small section on faith highlights how African Americans created religious institutions to support their survival and advancement. These served as moral and political hubs, offering community support, hope, and strength against oppression. This expands into one of the four main exhibitions, Double Victory, the African American Military Experience. This exhibit conveys a sense of appreciation and respect for the military service of African Americans, from the American Revolution to the War on Terror. African Americans provided military service throughout these 95 years, in a continued pursuit for freedom. The pursuit began as early as 1770, when Crispus Attucks became one of the first Americans to die, in the Boston Massacre. It continued to 1865 when the 13th Amendment was ratified. More than 5,000 African Americans, free, enslaved, and indentured, served in the colonial forces. African Americans continued to serve in the War of 1812, the Seminole Wars, and the Mexican-American War. The end of the Civil War brought freedom to African Americans but not equality nor integration. Since the Indian Wars began in 1866 to the end of World War II in 1945, hundreds of thousands of African Americans continued to serve in a segregated military. In 1948, Executive Order 9981 was signed, which integrated the military for subsequent engagements, including the Korean War, the Vietnam War, and the War on Terror. In this exhibit, we also find a wall of African American Medal of Honor recipients. The Medal of Honor is the nation's highest military award, and in 1996 the Pentagon determined that some African Americans had been denied the medal because of race, and corrected this in 1997. We then continued to Power of Place. A sense of place has deeply shaped African American history and culture. A multifaceted range of African American communities and identities have formed and changed in all corners of the country, and in turn influenced the regions around them. We find places like Lyles Station, Indiana, a story of family, farms, and land. Lyles Station is one of Indiana's earliest and most enduring black settlements, founded in the late 1840s by free African Americans Joshua and Sanford Lyles. This is coupled with Oak Bluffs, a vibrant black resort community in Martha's Vineyard, Massachusetts. Black Roots West focuses on the long-standing presence of black Americans in the American West, across 19 states. It includes personal stories of blacks in frontier life, as explorers, pioneers, and community builders. We learn about the tragic riots of Tulsa, Oklahoma, that resulted from a black teenager being falsely accused of assaulting a white woman. Clashes between black and white residents erupted, and for 2 days in late spring 1921, the thriving African American community of Greenwood, in Tulsa, Oklahoma, suffered the deadliest racial massacre in U.S. history. And we view photographs taken by H.C. Anderson depicting scenes of Greenville, Mississippi during segregation. We move on to the energizing Park Jams, a story of the birth of hip-hop in the Bronx, New York. This exhibit features the turntable of Bronx native DJ Tony Tone, founding member of the Cold Crush Brothers group. We then visit the rice fields of the Low Country, where enslaved Africans used West African rice farming skills to transform the southeast coast using complex irrigation. The next place is a cell from the Louisiana State Penitentiary, or Angola, known for much of the 20th century as a cruel, violence-prone, squalid prison where African American inmates were treated worse than slaves. We move on to Chicago, where black migrants escaped the Jim Crow South, but still faced low-paying jobs and segregation in overcrowded neighborhoods called ghettos. And then to Philadelphia, where the story of May Reeves is highlighted. As a pioneering milliner, who was famous for her custom-made hats, Reeves began with a $500 loan and became one of Philadelphia's first successful black woman entrepreneurs. We move out of the Power of Place exhibit area into making a way out of no way. This proverbial phrase was common in the rhetoric of Martin Luther King and other African American writers and speakers in the 20th century. As such, the exhibit explores themes of activism, agency, creativity, and resilience. It highlights personal stories of African Americans who challenged racial oppression and discrimination and created ways out of no way. It includes an area called Forces for Change, dedicated to the renowned educator and reformer, Mary McLeod Bethune, along with other black women social change agents. Mary McLeod Bethune was a powerhouse of black women's leadership in the 20th century. She founded the National Council of Negro Women in 1935, which became one of her most enduring legacies and a transformative moment in American history. We also learned about Prince Hall, who founded the first Black Masonic Lodge in 1784, creating a network for racial uplift and social justice. Throughout history, African Americans have taken action to improve their lives and challenge America to live up to its democratic ideals. Working both within and across racial lines, black activists mobilized to abolish slavery, secure civil rights, fight against injustice, and expand social and economic opportunities. Muhammad Ali stood out as a force for change, as both a three-time heavyweight boxing champion and an activist. He declared, "I shook up the world," after his 1964 victory over Sonny Liston. He used his platform to advocate for civil rights and religious freedom. His belongings, such as his training robe, are displayed there, symbolizing a boxer who championed a greater cause. We also explore influential African Americans in the press, including journalists like Robert Churchwell and publications like Ebony magazine. We end our walkthrough of the Making a Way Out of No Way exhibit area, admiring the enterprising spirit of African Americans. It highlights business success stories like R.H. Boyd, who launched the National Baptist Publishing Board in 1896, building it into the nation's largest black-owned publisher. And the evolution of black midwives, who turned ancestral birth knowledge into certified, self-run businesses. We then turn to the final exhibit area on L3, called Sports, Leveling the Playing Field. At the entrance, you're greeted by larger-than-life statues, most notably Olympic medalists Tommie Smith and John Carlos, frozen in their iconic 1968 Black Power salute, standing with silver medalist Peter Norman, all wearing human rights badges on their jackets. These powerful figures stand before immersive video walls that play pivotal athletic moments. This area explores the contributions of athletes, both on and off the field. Some athletes have been symbolic figures of black ability, while others have taken their activism beyond the court to the courtroom, boardroom and the newsroom. Because sports were among the first, and most high-profile spaces, to accept African Americans on relative terms of equality, sport has had a unique role within American culture. We see the transition from Negro Leagues baseball to integration, symbolized by the sign, "Mr. Rogel, the Tigers aren't all white anymore," marking a powerful shift in American sports. And then we walk down the hall of game changers, to see the people, events, and institutions that have forced the sports world and larger society to alter its practices, belief systems, or racial politics. Notably, we admire great athletes like Jesse Owens, Joe Louis, Jackie Robinson, Althea Gibson, and Muhammad Ali, to name a few. There are 17 cases in total, each containing a wealth of pictures and artifacts associated with some of the greatest transitional moments and athletes in American history. We learn about how Title IX opened doors for black women, such as Cheryl Miller, one of the first nationally recognized black female basketball players. And we culminate at the end of the hall, with current icons like Michael Jordan and Tiger Woods. The impact of these game changers demonstrates the power of sports to transform the world. Each display case also has a video monitor, bringing the stories of the featured athletes to life, and above, The walls are adorned by inspirational quotes, such as Jackie Robinson famously saying, "The right of every American to first-class citizenship is the most important issue of our time." Finally, there are small nooks, where you can explore sports and athletes in more detail. We completed our tour by heading down to Level 2, where you can explore more. Explore More is an interactive, multifaceted educational space dedicated to helping visitors connect and engage with African American history and culture in ways that expand perspectives, spark curiosity and creativity, and increase knowledge. It is a fun and interactive space where you can join the step show, practicing your moves with members of the professional dance company, or use interactive table displays to explore the Slave Wrecks project, which uses maritime archaeology, historical research, and sunken slave ships to study global African enslavement and the history of the African diaspora. You can take a trip using the Green Book, a travel guide for African Americans published from the 1930s to the 1960s. Finally, you can take a deep dive into the museum's collection through the Arc, a 30-foot-long curved digital wall. This interactive installation presents a rotating selection of objects and narratives. Each object on the Arc is tied to multiple informational layers. By tapping highlighted hotspots, users uncover contextual narratives such as provenance, historical significance, and personal testimonies from individuals connected to the item. We hope this virtual journey through the Smithsonian National Museum of African American History and Culture has been as enriching for you as it was for us. From the profound history galleries to the vibrant cultural expressions, this African American History Museum in Washington, D.C. truly offers an unparalleled experience. If you enjoyed this tour, please like this video, share it with others, and subscribe to our channel for more explorations. What was your favorite exhibit? Let us know in the comments below.